Chapter 6. Molly. Molly stared at Anna. Something came into the plane during the crash, Anna said, her voice steady. Some kind of electricity. A chill came over Molly. She had seen the lightning moving from seat to seat. She'd thought it was a dream, some kind of brain fritz caused by panic. But if Anna had seen it too, maybe it was real. Molly remembered how the lightning had felt in her head, probing her, testing her, finally accepting her, rejecting others. It took people, Anna said. Just lifted them up and we'll figure that out later, Molly cut in. Oliver wasn't ready to hear this. She wasn't sure if any of them were ready to talk about what had happened to the other passengers, but Oliver was the team mascot, 2 years younger than the rest of them. His mom hadn't even wanted to sign the permission letter for the trip until Molly had promised to look out for him. Now he was staring off into the jungle as if expecting a rescue party to appear. If he started panicking, everyone else would too, including Molly herself. She needed to distract them, and trivia questions weren't going to cut it. First things first, we have to figure out if those engines are about to blow up, okay? That got everyone's attention. All eyes turned to the 2 huge engines on this side's wing. They looked like they'd bashed through a few dozen trees on the way down. Their intakes were stuffed with leaves and shredded bark, even a few bright feathers. The engines steamed in the wet air, creaking and hissing like wet wood on a fire. Molly saw charred metal, but no flames. I don't smell fuel, Javi said. Anna nodded. Something sliced the roof open. An engine fire wouldn't do that. Then we're probably safe, Molly said, letting that last word linger. Second question. Is anyone else around? Javi took a deep breath and called, Hey! Anybody there? Only the birds responded. Molly didn't know how much about birds, but these sounded weird. Their squawking slid from pitch to pitch, like a screen door with a rusty hinge. Suddenly, a hiss came from the front of the plane. Something was ballooning into a being, a giant arm jutting out. Oliver screamed and Molly stepped in front of him. But then she saw the forward emergency exit opening. The giant arm was just another escape slide inflating, flailing madly as it took shape. It's okay, she said to Oliver, part of her marveling at how quickly the wadded-up plastic formed into a slide. The 2 girls stepped out into the wing in identical skirts, like school uniforms. They held hands wobbling a little. A taller boy loomed behind them. An exhausted shudder of relief went through Molly. If someone else had survived, then maybe Oliver was right, and the rest of the passengers were somewhere out there in this inexplicable jungle. Be careful up there, she shouted, and turned to Oliver and Anna. You guys, help them. We'll keep looking. Anna started through the undergrowth toward the base of the other slide, signaling for Oliver to follow. He went after her, looking relieved to have something to do. A moment later, Javi and Molly were alone. He looked at her with a blank expression. I hope you don't want any theories or conjectures from me. Molly swallowed. She didn't know what she wanted except for things to start making sense, and Javi could help with that. One thing she'd learned from living with her mother. Shared crazy was better than stuck in your own head kind. Just tell me what you're thinking. Okay. Javi's eyes were wide as they swept the surroundings. This looks like a jungle, but between Tokyo and New York, there's only Canada and Alaska and ocean. Molly watched as the first of 2 of the girls slid to the ground. You forgot Hudson Bay. Which is still not a jungle, Javi said. Which means we're way off course. Maybe there was some kind of storm or a hijacking, and we wound up in... Javi looked up at the trees and shrugged. South America? We flew thousands of miles due south, and none of us noticed? That doesn't make sense. I didn't say it. A note of panic crept into Javi's voice. Sorry, it's just... Molly shook her head. Before I fell asleep, there was snow outside my window as far as I could see, and South America would take another 12 hours. What plane carries that much fuel? Sure. Right, but Where we are isn't the big question, is it? Javi looked up at the silent plane, all those empty windows in a row. Where are they? It felt like a sliver of ice was lodged in Molly's throat. We can't tell Oliver what we're thinking. What are we thinking? Javi asked. Molly hesitated as Anna called up to the second girl. She seemed scared to come down the slide. The taller boy pushed past her and slid first. Molly cleared her throat. That lightning that Anna mentioned? I also... Psh! Javi cut in. Did you hear that? Molly listened. All she heard was the strange birds and the soft buzz of insects, and a distant rumbling like a waterfall. But then a sound came from the direction of a plane. Of the plane. A scrabbling. She turned. In the belly of the aircraft below the wing was a long, jagged hole. The cargo hold? Molly whispered. It could be a dog or something, Javi said quietly. Would anyone fly a dog to Japan? Well, we packed soccer-playing robots. Molly headed toward the rent in the airplane's hull, happy to leave the subject of missing passengers behind. Come on. The metal was jagged and the hole was a tight fit. Once they were inside, the cargo hold was a pitch dark. The two of them crept slowly across strewn luggage, moving in silence. What if something from the jungle had crawled in after the wreck? Jungles were full of predators, pythons, jaguars, tigers. Molly reminded herself that none of those things lived in Canada. Grizzly bears, sure, but what would bears be doing in a jungle? None of this made sense, really, and when logic was a waste of time, fear was probably still useful. More scrabbling echoed through the darkness. I wish we had a flashlight, Javi whispered. Molly paused. Just in front of her, a shaft of sun shot through a hole in the plane's skin, but the bright spot only made it harder for her eyes to adjust. Then she saw a piece of metal glittering on the floor. Hang on! Molly picked up the metal, then held it in the shaft of sunlight, reflecting a shaky beam into the darkness. She probed the scattered luggage and cargo crates till she found a figure in the shadows. Great! Called a voice. Hold that light steady! Molly looked at Javi. Another passenger? What are you doing down here? She called. The figure stood, holding up a hand to shield his eyes in the beam. Trying to find my luggage. Do you mind not pointing that in my eyes? I'm looking for a sword.